All right, buckle up for some serious horror, because today we're diving deep into the Children of the Corn franchise.
Oh, yeah. That whole world of killer kids and those creepy cornfields.
Straight out of Stephen King's twisted imagination.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack how that one story, spawned a whole universe of films,
Sequels.
remakes, the whole shebang.
It's wild, right? For anyone out there who maybe hasn't experienced the joy of a King-inspired cornfield nightmare,
Where do we even begin with something this massive?
yeah, it's a lot.
Well, every good harvest starts with that seed.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy.
And in this case, it all goes back to King's 1977 short story, Children of the Corn.
Yeah, this is where things get kind of interesting, right? Because that story, it was first published in, get this, Penthouse magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not exactly the first place you'd expect a story about, child preachers and blood sacrifice.
The Penthouse, that's a wild combo for sure.
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
So for those who haven't had the pleasure, what's the gist of King's original tale?
Okay, so King, he introduces us to this couple, Bert and Vicky, just driving through, like, the back roads of Nebraska.
Okay, classic horror setup. I'm already nervous.
Right. And they stumble on this town that's, like, eerily silent.
Uh-oh.
Except for the kids.
Oh, that's never good.
And it turns out these kids, they've got this whole cult thing going on.
A cult?
Yeah, worshiping this mysterious entity.
What, like a corn god or something?
Exactly. He who walks behind the rose. That's what they call him.
Okay, that's just creepy. Got to give King props for that name.
Oh, yeah. He knows how to make it stick with you.
And leading this whole creepy kid cult is who?
This charismatic young prophet named Isaac.
So we got creepy kids, a creepy corn god, a creepy prophet kid. What's not to love?
King just, like, nails that unsettling feeling about children, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And that unsettling feeling, it's amped up even more by the setting.
Yeah, that vast, like, isolating cornfield.
So it's not just a setting, it's a character, right?
Totally. And it adds this whole layer of dread, this claustrophobic atmosphere, even though you're out in the open.
Right. And that feeling, that oppressive atmosphere, it totally carries over into that first film adaptation, right? The one that came out in 84.
Yeah, 1984, Children of the Corn.
Instant cult classic.
It's interesting how it stays pretty faithful to the source material, but also, like, adds its own twists.
Yeah, it definitely expands on things, right? We still got Bert and Vicky, our unlucky tourists.
Right, and Isaac is still there, creepy as ever.
But the movie, it throws in Malachi, right?
Oh, yeah, Malachi, he's a big addition.
This character who's, like, challenging Isaac for control of the cult.
A real power struggle dynamic that you don't see in King's story.
Exactly. Makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much of the kid's devotion is real and how much is just, like, wanting power in this messed up little society.
It's a really interesting layer they added.
And let's not forget, visually, that movie nailed it.
Oh, yeah.
The way those kids are portrayed, their eyes, the way they move.
So effectively unsettling.
Chilling. So we got this super creepy story and then a film that brings that creepiness to life but adds its own twists.
So where does the Children of the Corn franchise go from there?
Because, and I know this is true, there are more movies. A lot more.
Oh, so many more. Like, the cornfield of terror was just getting warmed up.
Over how long?
The next couple of decades, we're talking like 9 sequels and remakes. It's like they couldn't stay away from those creepy kids in cornfields.
9? That's a lot of corn. Some must have been better than others, right?
Oh, definitely. A mixed bag, for sure.
And did they all follow the same formula, or did they try to switch things up?
Well, some stuck pretty close to the original,
Yeah.
but others tried branching out, different settings, themes, the whole deal.
So what, like Children of the Corn in space or something?
Not quite that wild, but they definitely got creative.
Well, I'm all for creative, especially when it comes to horror. Give me the highlights. What were some of the more interesting directions they took?
Well, that second film, Children of the Corn 2, it kept things pretty simple. Moved the cult to a new town, introduced a new leader.
New town, new leader. Got it.
But then they went and did Children of the Corn the third, and they took those killer kids out of the cornfields altogether.
Wait, seriously, where'd they go?
Straight to the big city.
No way. Like New York, L.A.
Chicago. Children of the Corn the third. Urban harvest.
Whoa, that's a change of scenery. I'm picturing corn stalks growing out of cracks in the sidewalk.
Right. It's kind of wild how they made it work, adapting those themes to a totally different environment.
So is he who walks behind the rows now like he who lurks in the subway?
Well, you'd have to watch it to find out, but it really makes you think about whether that evil is tied to a place or if it's something deeper,
Deep stuff, man. All right, so we've got rural horror, urban horror. What other landscapes did they conquer?
Oh, they really did it all.
Yeah.
Like there's one where it's college students going up against the cult, real slasher vibes mixed in with the supernatural.
Okay, I can see that working. So basically, Children of the Corn meets Scream.
Yeah, something like that. Then there's another one where this couple gets stranded in the desert.
The desert. Talk about a change of pace.
Right. Turns out the cult can thrive in the heat, too.
Man, they really put he who walks behind the rows through his paces, from cornfields to deserts. They weren't afraid to experiment.
Seems like the only limit was their imagination, right?
Well, you gotta admire that. Speaking of imagination, did any of these sequels try to bring back the OG villain, Isaac? I mean, you can't beat the original, right?
He totally did. Children of the Corn 666, Isaac's Return.
That's gotta be a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah. Big nostalgia factor there. Wasn't exactly the best film, but hey, sometimes you got to go back to your roots.
Totally, gotta respect that. Okay, so what about remakes? Any attempts to, like, completely reboot the whole thing with a fresh tape?
A couple, yeah. There was one in 2009 aimed for that original magic.
Did it work?
Not quite. Then there's this other one from 2020, real curious case.
What happened with that one?
Shelved. Barely saw the light of day.
Shelved. Now that's interesting. Makes you wonder what could have been, right?
Definitely adds to the whole mystery of the franchise.
So we got sequels, remakes, shelved projects. Clearly something about Children of the Corn really resonated with people.
Oh, for sure. King's original story, it just tapped into something deeply unsettling, something that sticks with you.
Like that feeling that something sinister is lurking beneath the surface, even in those wide open spaces.
Yeah, it makes you question those peaceful landscapes.
It's like those creepy kids and their cornfield god, they planted a seed of doubt in our minds, and it just keeps growing.
And that brings us to a really important question, like, what is it about this franchise that's so enduring? Why do these stories of killer kids in cornfields just keep coming back?
Right. Why are we so fascinated by evil kids?
Yeah.
What is it about that gets under our skin so effectively?
I think it might have something to do with expectations being flipped on their head.
Yep.
Like we see childhood as innocent, pure.
Vulnerable.
Exactly. But when that gets shattered, when children become the source of fear, it really messes with us, like on a fundamental level.
It's like we're hardwired to protect kids, not be afraid of them.
Right. But then you got a movie like Children of the Corn that just throws that whole idea out the window.
And it doesn't hurt that cornfields, even without the murderous children, are already kind of creepy.
Oh, absolutely. Those tall stalks, the rustling sounds.
It's like nature itself is in on the horror.
The Children of the Corn franchise, it really understands those primal fears, those anxieties that we all have deep down.
Yeah, it's not just about the scares, it's about that lingering feeling that something's not quite right.
Exactly. That feeling that things aren't what they seem.
And it's not just the setting, it's the visuals too, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Like those bright, sunny cornfields, but then, there's the violence, those innocent-looking kids.
It's a powerful contrast, makes it all the more disturbing.
Okay, so we got primal fears, amazing visuals, a premise that just works. But it's more than just scares, right? There's substance here too.
Oh, yeah. These films, they dig into some really interesting themes, like blind faith, the potential for violence.
And how those themes are all wrapped up in the fear, the atmosphere, the style. That's what makes it so effective, so memorable.
It's not about cheap thrills. It's about making you think, questioning human nature, all that.
This whole He Who Walks Behind the Rose character, I'm curious, how do the different movies handle that?
Oh, that's a great question. Because there's a lot of room for interpretation there, right?
It's like, is he a real being, a metaphor?
Exactly. And the different films, they explore that in really interesting ways.
All right, I'm hooked. Killer kids, creepy cornfields, a mysterious deity. This is shaping up to be one heck of a deep dive. But before we get too lost in the corn maze of it all, we got to talk about the impact, right? Because this franchise, it's gone way beyond just those movies.
Oh, yeah, we're talking cultural influence, inspiration for other creators, the whole deal.
Okay, now, that's a legacy. We'll be back in a flash to unpack all of that, so don't go wandering into any cornfields just yet. All right, we're back and ready to keep exploring this cornfield of nightmares that is the Children of the Corn franchise.
Yeah, before the break, we were just starting to talk about the impact, right? Like how this series really left its mark on horror.
Yeah, it's more than just those 9 sequels and remakes, right? Like, this thing's got legs.
Oh, totally. Those creepy kids in their cornfield. God, they've made their mark on pop culture, too.
So spill the beans. What kind of impact are we talking about here? Did He Who Walks Behind the Rose become, like, a household name?
Well, maybe not a household name, but, that phrase itself,
Yeah.
it's become shorthand for that whole creepy cornfield vibe, you know?
Okay, I see that.
You see it pop up in other films,
Hmm.
TV, even video games.
Wow, they really planted those seeds of inspiration, huh?
Exactly. They've kind of become the poster children for, like, unsettling agricultural horror.
That's a good one. Unsettling agricultural horror. I like it.
And think about how many horror movies use creepy kids as the villain.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole thing.
Like The Omen, right? The
Right.
Bad Seed, and more recently, The Babadook.
Right. All those creepy kids.
The whole trope, and, while those movies might not be directly inspired by Children of the Corn,
Yeah.
it's hard to deny that influence.
Yeah.
How we portray evil in children on screen, Children of the Corn, kind of paved the way.
Totally. They, created a whole subgenre creepy kid horror.
Yeah, like they sowed the seeds, and other filmmakers, they cultivated their own, terrifying versions.
That's a great way to put it.
So the question is why? Why does this theme resonate so much? What is it about innocent kids turning monstrous that just freaks us out so much?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think it has to do with, like, upending our expectations, right?
Yeah.
Like, childhood's supposed to be all about purity.
Innocence,
Yeah.
vulnerability, right? But when that image is shattered, when kids become the source of fear, it's like,
It shakes us to our core.
yeah, like something's fundamentally wrong.
It's like a law of nature being broken.
Yeah, we're programmed to protect children, not be afraid of them.
Exactly. And then you got a movie like Children of the Corn, and it just flips the script.
Throws everything we know out the window.
And that unsettling feeling, it's often made worse by the setting too, right? The cornfield itself.
Oh, yeah, the cornfield, it's not just a backdrop, right?
No, it's like a symbol of the unknown, a place where things can go really, really wrong.
It's like nature itself is in on the horror.
Yeah, exactly.
Cornfields just have that built-in creepiness factor, even without the threat of, murderous children.
It's true, those tall stalks, the rustling sounds.
Yeah, the feeling of being watched. You never know what's out there.
Like nature itself is conspiring to create this, like, atmosphere of unease.
I mean, that's what Children of the Corn does so well, right? It taps into these primal fears, those anxieties we all have deep down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's not just the setting or the concept. The movies also have this really distinct visual style, right?
Oh yeah, visually.
Like, think about it, those stark, sun-drenched fields.
Right.
But then there's the violence, the contrast of those innocent-looking kids.
So effective.
It's like they're saying, look how beautiful this place is, but don't let your guard down because something really bad is about to happen.
It's like they're saying, this is gonna hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
And that feeling that, like, things aren't what they seem, that permeates the whole franchise.
Yeah, I get that.
It's everywhere.
Okay, so we talked sequels, remakes, the creepy kids, the cornfields. But there's one question I think we haven't really addressed yet.
Okay, sure.
Why do we keep coming back to these stories?
Mhm.
Like, why do the Children of the Corn films, even with, some of them being a little formulaic, why do they keep drawing us in?
I think it might have to do with mythology,
Okay.
The franchise, even though it's set in, like, the modern world, it's built this whole mythology.
Saying that.
Its
Yeah.
own rules, symbols, characters that just resonate with us.
So you're saying it's more than just the scares?
Oh, way more. There's something deeper going on, something that keeps us hooked.
I'm with you on that. It's like we're fascinated by the unknown, the possibility that there are things out there, forces we don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe, just maybe, those things aren't so friendly.
Right, and the franchise, it plays with that fascination, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It leaves us with more questions than answers.
Yeah, like, who is he who walks behind the rose, really?
Right. What do the cult really want?
Why are they so willing to do these terrible things?
Those are questions that stick with you long after the movie's over.
It's like it throws you into this messed up world, and then it's like, figure it out.
Yeah,
Makes you think about good and evil, makes you question your own beliefs.
it's like horror as a catalyst for some serious soul searching.
Ooh.
I think that's part of what makes Children of the Corn so powerful,
Yeah.
It's not just trying to scare you. It makes you think.
Right. It challenges you.
It forces you to look at those darker parts of human nature, the stuff we don't like to talk about.
And sometimes that can be even scarier than any monster.
Absolutely. The best horror, it stays with you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Sequels, remakes, creepy kids, those thought-provoking themes. But how did those themes change, as the franchise went on? Did they just rehash the same ideas, or did things get more interesting?
That's a great question because the sequels and remakes, They definitely played around with those themes, like blind faith and the nature of evil.
Give me some examples. How did they mix things up?
Well, some of them, they went deeper into the psychology of cults,
Okay.
exploring how these charismatic leaders, they can manipulate people,
Mhm.
especially when they're vulnerable.
So it's not just that the kids are, like, inherently
Yeah,
evil.
it's more complex than that.
It's the power dynamics, the manipulation, all the things that can push someone to do terrible things.
Exactly.
Makes you think.
And then some of the films, they even bring in the idea of generational trauma,
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
like suggesting that the cycle of violence keeps going because the adults fail to protect the children.
Wow, that adds a whole other layer to the story, right?
Yeah.
It's not just evil kids, it's about the adults who created this situation.
The adults who let them down.
And what about He Who Walks Behind the Rose? Did the different films have different takes on, like, what he represents?
Oh, for sure. They really ran with that.
Like, what were some of the different interpretations?
Some portrayed him as this, like, literal demon,
Okay.
while others made him more symbolic, like representing the evil that can grow in isolated communities.
Oh, I see. So it's like, is the evil something external, something supernatural, or is it something that comes from within?
Exactly. And seeing those different interpretations, how they change over time, it's really fascinating.
It's like the franchise is holding up a mirror to our own anxieties about evil.
That's a great way to put it.
So it's not just scary stories, it's about the stories we tell ourselves, about the nature of evil, the darkness that's out there, and maybe the darkness that's inside us too.
Exactly.
And those stories, much like those cornfields, they can be both beautiful and terrifying.
Well said.
So, as viewers, what can we take away from all of this? Like, what's the big takeaway, the lesson we can learn from spending time in these cornfields of terror?
I think the most important thing is that horror, when it's done right, it's more than just entertainment.
It's deeper than that.
It's a way for us to face our fears, to explore those darker parts of ourselves.
And maybe come to terms with the fact that the world can be a pretty messed up place.
Exactly. And Children of the Corn, for all its ups and downs, it really shows us that evil can pop up anywhere.
Yeah, even in the most innocent looking places.
And that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we create ourselves.
That's a chilling thought and a perfect way to set up the final part of our deep dive.
Can't wait to see what other horrors await us in those cornfields.
We'll be right back to wrap things up, so don't go anywhere. Okay, we're back, ready for the final harvest, of our deep dive into the Children of the Corn franchise.
Yeah. It's been a long journey, hasn't it? Through those creepy cornfields and all.
We've covered so much: King's original story, the sequels, the remakes, all the crazy ways it's impacted pop culture.
It's amazing how one story, one short story, can, like, spawn a whole mythology, a whole universe of fear that people are still into decades later.
Yeah, and before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
What's your take on all of this? Why do you think this franchise, with its creepy kids and cornfield cults and, mysterious deities, why does it still fascinate us? Why does it still creep us out?
That's the big question, isn't it? Like, what is it about this kind of horror that really gets under our skin and just stays with us?
For me, it's those primal fears, the ones that are just kind of buried deep down in all of us.
Oh, yeah, like what?
The fear of the unknown, losing control, seeing something innocent become something monstrous.
You're right. Those are big ones. And Children of the Corn, it doesn't just rely on jump scares or gore. It taps into those everyday anxieties, the things that we all worry about, Like, is the world really as safe as we think it is?
Yeah, is there darkness lurking just around the corner? And I think the setting, those cornfields, they just amplify that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. The cornfield becomes, like, more than just a place. It's this symbol of isolation, a place where the rules don't apply.
It's like anything can happen in a cornfield.
Yeah, and you never know what's hiding in those rows.
It's like nature itself is part of the horror.
And that's what makes it so effective, that feeling that you're not safe, even in broad daylight.
It's like the cornfields are hiding something ancient and evil, something we can't even understand.
And that's part of what draws us in, right? The mystery, the sense that there are forces at work beyond our control.
Totally. We love stories that push the boundaries, that make us question everything.
And Children of the Corn does that. It really makes you think.
It leaves you with more questions than answers, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think about good and evil, about innocence, about faith, all these big ideas.
And maybe, just maybe, it shows us a little bit of the darkness that's inside all of us.
That's a scary thought, but I think you're right. Horror can be like a mirror,
Oh, yeah.
It shows us who we are, the good and the bad.
It forces us to confront those parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore.
And Children of the Corn, even with its, flaws and inconsistencies, it does that really well.
It's thought-provoking, that's for sure.
It reminds us that evil can be anywhere, that innocence can be corrupted, that even in the most beautiful places, darkness can take root.
Yeah, and thrive.
So, as we wrap up our journey through the cornfields of terror, we leave you with this. The next time you're driving past a cornfield, take a moment to listen.
To really listen.
You never know what secrets the wind might be whispering.
Or what might be lurking in the shadows, just out of sight.
Sleep tight.